5, 4, 3, 2, 1. KenCast.
Hey everyone, welcome to another KenCast. It's so great to see you. That's right, I am coming to you live from a video game. And not just any video game, one of the great video games that make up the Mario series. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I am a Super Mario Brothers fan, have been for a long time. And if you didn't know, there's a new Super Mario Brothers movie. And today we are going to talk about that movie. We're going to get your thoughts on the movie. And to join me in this conversation, I have someone who is not only a fan of all great things pop culture, he is an expert in video games. He loves video games, and he knows so much about so many. He has an amazing channel, and he is going to talk to us today, give us his expertise on the Super Mario Brothers movie. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so pleased to introduce Strife the Warrior. Hey, Strife, how are you doing over there? Wow, I love it.
Thank you, Ken. I'm doing good. It's a good Sunday. And by the way, guys, like the shirt thing was totally a coincidence, which I absolutely loved. Was pretty dope. So I actually got this for Christmas. So I've kind of been wearing it here and there around the house. I don't know if I've worn it on a stream yet, though. I think it's my first time wearing it on stream, but no, I'm doing good. It's a good weekend. It's a little rainy down here, but you know, I got a gym membership, so I won't be too sad about that. I just started doing some walking inside, so.
That's great. And yeah, Strife, I love your shirt. This is the first time I've worn this on a live stream. Just everyone, I am a Super Mario Brothers fan, Nintendo fan. And this was a very important era, don't you think? The Super Nintendo era?
Definitely. Like it was technically really the first system that I've really ever, not necessarily played, but like really enjoyed for all the way. And I'm really sad too, because I sold my Super Nintendo, my original one, about 5 years ago, but I had kept it with me since I was 4 years old. So like I've always believed, and maybe it's just because of a little nostalgia, but even with third-party titles, that like the Super Nintendo was just had such a great library. Like when you think back when there weren't any issues with Squaresoft, or you know, they were working with Rareware all the time. Like you think of all, you know, Donkey Kong, Killer Instinct, Final Fantasy. I mean, Super Mario RPG, the crossover between Square and Nintendo, it's just, yeah, it's such a great era for sure. So
yeah, no kidding. And that's one thing, you know, you bring up Super Mario RPG, but that's just like a wonderful thing about Mario is like it goes in every direction. You know, it started out as a platformer, but you have like RPGs, you have like all these types of genres that Mario appears in, and it's just really incredible. It's a testament to the strength of the character, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you think about it like that's really like one of the few video game characters that have been able to kind of get away with just pretty much throwing anything to the wall that sticks and actually just kind of making it work, especially with you really think about it outside of like some recent, there really hasn't been a bad core Mario game. Like you think about, you know, Mario World changed things up. Mario 3 changed things up. Super Mario Sunshine changed things up. Super Mario Galaxy changed things up. New Super Mario Brothers, you know, the list kind of goes on. There really hasn't been a bad core Mario game. So,
right. And well, this is a good opportunity to talk about like our history with the Mario game. I know everyone has their own history with the Mario games. What's your background with Super Mario? When did you start playing? What was your first game?
So we first owned, my family owned a NES. And so when I was 4 years old, the very first Super Mario Brothers game was the first game that I played. Eventually our NES broke at the time. So that's when we got the Super Nintendo. And so like after that, like I would play Super Mario World and Super Mario All-Stars religiously, like all the time. So like those are two games that like I've ran through so many times, like it's not even funny. And then, you know, when 64 came out, I was a little late into the era, but when I was 8, by that time, you know, Mario 64 had been out for 2 years, but I got introduced to that. So so funny enough, one of the ones I had always wanted, but I never really got to participate because I instead got a PS2 from my parents at the time, was the GameCube era. I actually missed out on a lot of, you know, what was considered a very prominent part of Nintendo's history. And but then I had a Wii, a Wii U and whatnot. So yeah, I liked a lot of the different Mario games, especially like some of the side ones. And I think one that we'll probably kind of talk about a little bit later that I was really a fan of too, that were on the handheld with the Mario and Luigi RPG series, which I felt like was like a nice spiritual successor of Super Mario RPG, which another another great classic title. As far as like my newest favorite, I would say kind of more quote unquote recent core game. I haven't played Odyssey yet, and that's kind of just me being being cheap because when it came out, I was kind of waiting for it to drop down in price, and it's still $50 after that game's been out for 6 years. So there's a couple times it went on sale, but I didn't get to take advantage of it. But the one that I've played was Super Mario 3D World. That one, the one that was on the Wii U, and that got reported to Switch. That one's really, really, really good, and that's like kind of like my more recent favorite core Mario game. So,
yes, and you know what? I totally agree with you. I love Super Mario 3D World. Everyone has their different opinions on what's a great game, but I thought that was an amazing translation of the 2D Mario to a 3D world. It was like that same gameplay style, which is my favorite. Like when I started, it was back on the original NES with the original Super Mario Brothers. You get your original NES system, and it came with like the double pack with Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt.
Oh, yep.
And that was kind of like that was your game selection for the Nintendo initially. And
Right.
so it was like one of those two games, at least when I was young. And so I was like, oh, this Super Mario game, it's kind of fun. But then I kept playing it. It's like, it's really fun. And at first I thought the gun game, Duck Hunt, was like the better game. But then I realized that the Mario game was deeper. And I just became a Mario fan, then went on to Mario 2, Mario 3. And that's when I started. And I've pretty much played through all the mainline console games, except like I missed out on some of the early GameCube era. So I've actually never played Super Mario Sunshine. But aside from that one on all the consoles, I've played them all. Love them.
So, funny thing you brought up the NES. So I actually rebought an NES recently in December. I found one off of Craigslist and whatnot. So here's a fun fact that anybody doesn't know. So I was getting a lot of a gray screen and whatnot. I actually figured out how to take it apart and fix the cartridge reader. So what a lot of people don't know is you can actually boil the black connector, because it's like this black plastic slot. You can boil it in water because the metal in those pins don't rust. So I was actually able to do that, boil it, and of course let it air dry. And once it air dried, you take this cartridge, you stick it in over and over a few times, put it back together, started working. So it had like what you just mentioned, quite a few decent games. It has the first 3 Mario games, and then the one including Duck Hunt. Like I still have the Zapper. I was actually able to get a couple different controls. I actually just got a CRT TV recently from a friend too.
No, you did?
Yeah. So it's huge and heavy, but like I have it in the closet for now just because I don't have really room to set it up. But yeah, I was able to get it was like that and like 30 games for like a little over $100. It was like a really good steal. So
Wow, guys. Yeah. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We are going to be talking about the Super Mario Brothers movie. Strife, as you can tell, has a long history. He's an expert on all things video games. So this is a lot of fun. I want to say today that, guys, for whatever reason, your comments aren't coming into StreamYard, or I can't see them. So I'm kind of monitoring them from YouTube. So I might not be able to pull them up today, but we'll talk. And I want to say hi to everyone. Drew, Call of the Cobra, everything's been going well. Maite, OAJ, Jaws, it's great to see you guys.
Today, everything's been going. Sorry, I'm trying not to play. I was trying to look at the comments too. I'm over here playing the replay. We're getting what do you call it? Inception. So
yeah, exactly right. Let's see. Jaws. I see Jaws says, my question is sequel movie title. The title will be Super Mario Brothers 2 or Super Mario Land or World. If Wario appears, the title will be Super Mario Land. Interesting. Right, because Strife, we know that there's going to be a sequel, and we'll launch a movie, but do you have an idea of what they'll call it, or will they call it the new Super Mario Brothers movie? I don't know.
I think they would probably go simple and just go Super Mario Brothers 2 or the Super Mario Brothers movie 2 or something like that. I feel like even though it would be, that'd probably be like the more logical choice, but unless they, but then again, given, and I guess we should also preface, we are talking spoilers, so The movie's been out for a month. So like definitely go see it if you haven't. If you don't want to see it, pause here and then come back. But I mean, given the Easter egg credit of Yoshi, it could also be called Super Mario Brothers 2 Yoshi's Island, which would be kind of like fall into like a nice little reference of the Super Nintendo title. So
yes,
yeah.
You're right. I love that. Yeah, because Yoshi is set up perfectly for the next one.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, let's talk about the movie. You are obviously a longtime fan, and what were your feelings going into it? What were your expectations? What were you hoping for? And were you waiting for this movie for decades?
So, like, I mean, it's no secret that video game movies have kind of been bottom of the barrel most of the time. Like, I mean, with what we could have at the time in the 90s and stuff like that, there's been very few exceptions that, like, the very first Mortal Kombat movie, for example, was pretty decent given, at the time as lore close they could get. The whole thing about that, why that movie didn't have gore, for those they said they would only do the movie if they could lock in a PG-13 rating, which they basically took away. The thing that made Mortal Kombat famous was the gore. So, and then obviously there's another movie I was thinking of. I've heard the Tomb Raider ones. I haven't seen that movie in a while, but I've heard the Tomb Raider movies were pretty good by video game movie standards.
With Angelina Jolie.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, of course, now recently, the Sonic movie, obviously the new movie. And honestly, I don't care what people say. I still thought the newest Mortal Kombat movie was pretty accurate to the lore. And you could argue that it was already more accurate to the games because it had gore. So, but
right.
So initially my first feelings, my biggest complaint with the movie before watching it was that Charles Martinet should have been the voice of Mario. Like, it makes no sense to recast somebody that has been the movie or the character's voice for nearly 3 decades. Like, it's kind of dumb. It's like if Pat Morita was still alive when Cobra Kai was made, and we would recast Pat Morita. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Now, and this is kind of a common problem when you have big animation films like that. You get a lot of people that are big name stars that are there to sell the movie. So Chris Pratt, Jack Black, which, by the way, he did really good about. I don't have any complaints about him. He really surprised me. But then there's the problem where you have people that have been in the voice acting industry for years. Like, you think of Charles Martinet, Frank Welker, Matt Mercer, all these kind of different people. They don't get the time to shine because then Hollywood is focused on big name movies. That's kind of a common problem with these type of movies. So that was my main thing. I wasn't sure if I would like the animation style because, like, at the same time, I was like, why don't you just rip assets from the game and use that? Like, it's, like, I wasn't too sure about the art style, like for Mario, Luigi, and Peach. But so anyway, that all changed when I was watching the movie. Like, I'm glad that they made Charles Martinet Giuseppe, which was Jumpman, and he's playing like a very early version of Donkey Kong. Like, that all made sense. I'm glad they at least did something like that because that was like the only way to really have him cameo. Not to mention he's also the voice of the Mario Brothers father. So it was really, really good. I liked it overall. And the main thing with a movie like this is that when you have a series that has so many different core games that not a lot of them follow any continuity, there's very few exceptions. Like, for example, Mario Galaxy 2 is like a remake plus sequel of Super Mario Galaxy 1. Yoshi's Island is a prequel to Super Mario World. You kind of have to take elements from wherever you can get. So there's, because Mario has been in all these different core games, there's been very few games that kind of follow any kind of continuity. So it makes sense that they took a lot of elements, made it their own. I'm glad the musical score was very true to the series because, if you had really tried to do any kind of different score, it just wouldn't have worked. So you can tell that these people were dedicated and love the fans. And I think I don't know if you've heard of Matt McMuscles. He does a series called What Happened on YouTube.
No, I haven't.
Okay, so he really worth checking out because he does a lot of things. He does like a lot of videos on video game media and stuff of like, hey, what happened? Why did they bomb? So, like, for example, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, the original Super Mario Brothers movie, and then just actual video games too that like kind of like, it's really worth checking out. But anyway, one of the things he said was that, like, for that movie, and this video he made came out like a few years ago before the Mario, the new Mario movie came out. He was like, he's like, it almost seems like they should have just made it an animated film from the start. And if you look at the Mario Brothers, the original 93 movie, of why they had so many changes, they actually were trying to aim for a very accurate adaptation, like a fantasy setting, but then, you know, the new directors came in, changed everything, and made it miserable for everybody. Like, you had, like, all these people were excited to make the movie, like John Leguizamo, Bob Hoskins, Dennis Hopper, rest in peace. They were very, you know, passionate about the project, but then the directors came in, changed everything. I mean, I don't know if you know this, there's also a community out there that put together a lot of the cut footage back into the Mario movie, So, but you got a long kind of roundabout answer, but yeah, I'm glad it came out. This opens the door for a lot more video game movies of this caliber. I think Sonic the Hedgehog also helped the standard, with when they came out with the first two movies, which I haven't seen personally, but I just know from friends that are Sonic fans that it's really good. So this could be a new era where we're actually finally getting things right as far as video game movies.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And I agree with you, from the 90s, I remember going to see Street Fighter with Jean-Claude Van Damme. We've got Drew O'Halley. If you listen to the Last Word podcast, they do a whole episode on Street Fighter. And it's like, for what it was enjoyable, but you're right. It's like back in the 90s, they were so focused on doing these live action video game movie adaptations when really Mario was probably popular enough to do a, if not like a full on Disney animated style movie, maybe at least 20th Century Fox, like a decent budgeted animated film probably would have been amazing. Like even back in the 90s, I don't know why they didn't do that. Right. I do want to thank Clifford. Thanks so much for the super chat. I'm sorry today, Clifford, I'm not able to bring your comment on screen, but Strife, Clifford says, out of curiosity, Ken and Strife, do you remember any of the cheat codes by heart from Nintendo and Super Nintendo?
Up, up, down, down, left, right, BA start.
That's great. Oh, that is the classic Konami Ultra. Yep. That's great. And I remember, let's see, off the top of my head, in the original Super Mario Brothers game, if you die and go back to the main screen, I believe if you hit the A button and then start, you can continue from the last world that you died on. And then the one that I most used was in Castlevania 3. You put in the name, asks you to put in your name, put in the name, help me, and you get 10 lives instead of 3. And I needed that. That's a tough game. Anyway.
But so the other thing too, when you're talking about the 90s film, and this also brought up a really good point that me and my friend kind of talked about after we saw the Mario movie. There's only so many certain franchises you could really only do live action. Like obviously you could do Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter, fighting games, you could do stuff like that. But Mario, even though it was revolution at the time, it as we've seen, it's better as an animated film. Even Legend of Zelda, I think, could also be a good animated film. You might be able to get it to be a live action film, but with with what this Mario movie is set, why not? I would be okay with all Nintendo movies were animated at this point.
Yeah.
So.
And it makes sense, right? Because that's the style. That's Nintendo's style. Has always been like bold, animated, artistic in some sense, whether it's the realm of cartoony to I don't know what you'd call like Breath of the Wild, but that's like sort of a impressionistic art. I don't know, but it's like a different type of animation. So, okay, now you talked about Charles Martinet not playing Mario, and I kind of agree. I was like, I heard that Chris Pratt was voicing Mario, and I was like, okay, like Chris Pratt's great, like he's in so much, but I'm like, why is it always Chris Pratt, like who's doing all this stuff? And I was wondering about that. Charles Martinet, why didn't they have him? And I was watching the movie. By the way, I think Chris Pratt does a fine job. Like he does his job. I believed he was Mario. And they did include Charles Martinet, as you mentioned, in 2 different roles, but he does a really good job as Mario's father. Yeah. Like he's a legit voice actor, and he could have done Mario.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Tell me what you think of this idea. I was watching the press interviews for this and I realized why they do this. I realized why they cast celebrities in these roles. It's so they can go out on press tours with reporters and people will want to watch the interviews and they'll care about the interviews. And so if you had Charles Martinet going and doing a press tour, people might care less than if it's Chris Pratt and Anya Taylor-Joy and Jack Black, that's my theory, at least, is like, and I think you alluded to it before. It's like these people can help sell the movie.
Yeah. I mean, that could be a good point for a marketing standard. But the thing is, though, too, like, there's also been a few viral videos that people have done on Charles Martinet. Like Great Big Story did like one where he talked, and so yeah, I mean that could be a thing. But even if you like think to him not just doing phrases, for a lot of people that don't know, like I think one of his very few first voice roles as Mario was Mario Teaches Typing, where he's actually speaking like full sentences and articulate and stuff like that. So like it's not like he was just doing like, catchphrases and stuff like that. Like he knows how to articulate the character. And then what I saw in a recent interview one time too, was just like he actually changed some lines in the script because I think for that game, the typing one, they wanted him to say something negative or whatnot as Mario, of like, oh, too bad, try again, or or you did this wrong or something. He's like, no, like, I'm kind of doing this character for a while. I think Mario shouldn't say no. He should be more encouraging, like, and stuff like that. So it kind of really shows, like, he almost knew that this character that he was voicing at the time was just going to be very generational and like speak out to so many kids and stuff like that. So and not to mention, here was something I found out like a few years ago that I always thought was interesting. So did you ever play Super Punch Out, the Super Nintendo game?
Yeah, briefly, and I probably got to give it another shot because I love the original, and Super Punch Out was just a little different somehow. But anyway, yeah.
So he voiced every single character in that game.
No way, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So like, I mean, he's definitely, and you think about it too. He's done Mario, like, I mean, not right away, but like he's done Mario, Luigi, Wario, Waluigi, like all these different characters. So it's just like, I don't know, like. I guess I see what you're saying though, and what somebody might have said about like the whole marketing thing too. But like at this point, he's like so synonymous with the character, it really wouldn't have been that big of a risk, in my opinion. So,
right, I know it's like you're looking at the Super Mario Brothers movie now, and we'll get into this. I mean, it has crossed $1.1 billion worldwide.
That's insane,
and I don't think that has anything to do with the fact that Chris Pratt is playing Mario. Right. Like I don't think that movie got any kind of boost from that. And it's so I wonder if Nintendo pushed for him for a while, but maybe Illumination was like, oh well, we need like a popular younger actor to be the lead or something like that. But regardless, he did do a great job in the movie, and they included him anyway. Right. So that's good.
So here's a funny story that you mentioned, that the Street Fighter movie, the original ones, kind of suffered the same thing. So the guy that played Captain Sawada, he had already done roles as Ryu in a live action portion where like he was Ryu in the commercials and whatnot. So, but they wanted Byron Mann for whatever reason, which honestly, I think they could have done what they did with him in the first place. They could have just had Sawada, the guy that played Sawada as Ryu, dubbed over his voice like they did anyway in the film. And then, had Byron Mann as Fei Long. Because I actually rewatched the scene between him and Vega fighting like near the end of the movie. He does some, like, obviously he does really special moves, but he does like some very Bruce Lee characteristic like yelling, and like there's action shots. Like he has the claw strike, like Enter the Dragon, and all kinds of stuff. So it's kind of funny that like that also was kind of the same thing. Because also Capcom, like, they did a lot of funding for the film. I don't know if they did all of it. I want to say it's half. So, and it's interesting that they took so many creative differences too, considering they had approved every single thing that went into the film. So,
right.
Who knows? So,
right. And, honestly, a movie like Street Fighter or a movie like Mortal Kombat, to me, that makes sense. Like if you wanted to do a live action version. So that's a case where you're right. It's like they really could have done something very close to the game and the lore, but I guess it's tough. Like if you're used to making movies and you're creative, maybe that's a head scratcher. Looking at a video game that's basically a fighter video game, and like, how do I make a story out of this? How do I make a movie out of this? And maybe it's just taken a long time, but like you said, they did it with Mortal Kombat.
So here's a thought. Like, if that's the case, why don't they just start adapting RPGs? Like you literally have the formula like right there on paper. Like, and you think about it too, you don't see a lot of. I think maybe Warcraft. Like I've never played Warcraft, but that's probably like the closest RPG movie that we have out there. And that's kind of why I'm excited for the future. Like I don't think it would ever happen, but if they adapted, for example, Super Mario RPG, like that's easy. Like all they have to do is just like it's really a copy and paste. Or if they did the Mario and Luigi, like even if they did Paper Mario, like that would just be like that would be easy. You wouldn't have to worry about creative differences, so to speak, unless you were doing cameos and stuff. But they could easily just adapt something like that.
Well, you bring up an excellent point. For this movie, Super Mario Brothers movie, they went in the direction of, and I want to get your thoughts on this, kind of like a very light story approach. Like it was light, it was funny. The story wasn't too deep. It was really just kind of like the template of a lot of the Mario platforming games of Bowser coming. He wants to take Peach, marry her. Mario has to rescue her, and with fun characters, funny moments, lots of 80s musical cues, that type of thing. Do you feel like that was the right approach? Or do you think they should have gone deeper into like a Mario RPG storyline type of thing?
I think that's considering this movie was also not only for Nintendo fans, but to also maybe help those that are casual Mario fans or people casual fans in general, parents that may have never played video games and they're taking their kids to see Mario. I think that was probably the best approach they could have gone to make it as mainstream as possible. Because the thing is too is they borrowed all kinds of different elements. Like I really loved Mario and Donkey Kong's frenemy relationship because that talks about Mario's origins. Like he was originally at odds with Donkey Kong before he was at odds with Bowser. So that was kind of cool. I liked that. And they with like the whole like the superstar like the star invincibility thing, which is kind of nice. Like 'cause it kind of ties both like the stars from Mario 64 and then also the stars from like the ones that would make you invincible. I think that was probably the best direction that they could have gone. But because they've gone this direction, they can now set that up to do stuff like if they did like Mario RPG like movies, they could now have a formula to kind of go off on because like you can kind of tell this was just to set the expectation of like this is what the universe is going to be like as far as that goes, and they can kind of go and build it from there.
Right. I know, and the movie, the way they did it, I agree. I think it was the right tactic because if people mostly know Mario, I think that his most popular games are just the platforming games. They're just the fun games where he's running around, stomping on Koopa Troopers and getting power-ups, that kind of thing. And that's what this movie is. It's fun, and it's not like weighed down by story. There are tons of jokes, so many references. I mean, and we can probably get into a few of those, but like everywhere there are references. And it just seems like the right approach that a 6-year-old kid would really just enjoy it. And then us, who have been with this for decades, really enjoy it as well. And it almost seems like Mario shouldn't be weighed down with really heavy story necessarily, if they're not going to do it just right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and that's kind of also the essence of Mario games. They're just easy and pick up to play. Any core game you think about, they've always been like that. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So let me bring up, and guys, if you're just joining us, I am talking with Strife the Warrior. He has an amazing channel. Here's his YouTube channel. It's incredible. Like he does all kinds of movie stuff, all kinds of game stuff. Lately, he has been diving deep into Rocky. And he also does these amazing playthroughs, randomizers. Man, how cool is that?
Thank you.
But so I don't know. Maybe we'll see Mario on his channel sometime. I don't know. But
sure.
I just want people to point out to go to your channel and subscribe because it is well worth it. His stuff is amazing.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to bring this up. I mean, just because we're talking movies and we have to, is the Rotten Tomatoes. I just think this is so interesting. You have critics that are kind of okay on it. Like some really liked it, some didn't. but that audience score, you rarely see audience scores that high. It's a 96% audience score with over 10,000 verified ratings. And what is your thought on why this disparity exists? Is there something that audiences get that the critics don't?
Yeah, I mean, it's simply, it's not made for the critics. It's made for fans. That's really what it just comes down to, because you can kind of have some kind of like some really good movie that maybe like somebody will see like the themes, the analysis and stuff like that, but not everybody's going to see that the same way. I mean, it's kind of the reason why I do an analysis stuff. For example, like I try to pick out details that people might not catch the first time. And, you know, this is how I see it. This is why I enjoy it and whatnot. You don't have to agree with me, but that's kind of the reason I see it. But the thing too, I think why some of the critics are kind of harsh on this is they forget that it's made for those that were both long time and casual Mario fans. Like it's not meant to be Casablanca. It's meant to just be a fun movie that's paying homage to one of the greatest films or greatest video games ever made. And that's why they kind of overcomplicate it, I think. So
right. And I've seen a lot of people online, some like think pieces, I guess you could say, they're kind of film purists, you know, talking about, oh, well, this is not the potential. Look at what Pixar's done. And, you know, Illumination's kind of just coasted in and they haven't done a good job on this. And the thing is, to me, I never expected this to be like a Pixar movie. You know, that brings in a whole bunch of, I don't know what you want to call it, sentimentality. Like, it brings up a lot of emotion that I don't know if that would be appropriate for a Mario movie. And you're kind of changing the game, as we were kind of talking about before. It's not just like this light, fun, funny pick up and play movie. You know, it's like you have to have some heavy, thought-provoking storyline. And I don't know if that's Mario.
Right. Yeah.
So
exactly.
Yeah. So do you think that perception of the movie, I remember walking out of this thinking, I have no clue what a non-fan would think. Like, I'm too deep into playing these games for decades that I can't even begin to think what a non-fan would think about this movie. I don't know. What do you kind of feel the same way, or is this just for fans, or are you able to get a sense of whether non-fans could walk in and like this movie too?
No, I think non-fans could enjoy it too. Like I was saying earlier, you know, you might have like these parents that have never played video games before, and they're taking, you know, their kid to see this movie because I know my kids like Mario, and they're probably gonna enjoy it too. That's kind of why you have like some of the humor in there, some of the 80s references, which in my opinion, I know some people were like, you know, the 80s reference is kind of stereotypical, but I mean, Mario was the king of the 80s. Like, of course, you got to have like some kind of music that represents that era. So yeah, I thought they were all fitting. No, I think a casual fan can enjoy it too, because I mean, you look at all these casual fans that aren't hardcore Disney fans, but they've enjoyed, like, over the years, watching animated films and stuff like that. You know, over time, animation has just become one of those genres that people, you know, longtime fans of a franchise or not, can kind of go and see. Like, you know, we saw it with Disney, and then we started seeing it with Nickelodeon, then we started seeing it with, like I said, Illumination. So yeah, I think anybody can enjoy it.
And sorry guys, I can't bring up your comments. Cobra Kai Nerd says, I was watching Mario the movie in the theaters and there were a bunch of kids there, right? And so it's a cool thing that it just spans generations. Ben Matella says, so many references to the games in the movie. Loved Punch Out Pizza.
Oh yeah, that was my favorite part too. Yeah.
That was. And do you have like other favorite like little references in the movie?
Yeah, the Punch Out one was definitely my favorite. I like that they actually had, I think it was Diddy, Dixie, and one of the other Kongs make a cameo during the fight, the stadium fight. That was pretty cool.
Yes.
The Rainbow Road obviously was a good reference. I did like that they put the eel in from Mario 64. Like, that was really cool. These are kind of some of the ones I'm thinking top of my head. I did Chunky. There you go. I did also like they did a flashback where it showed the Baby Mario and Baby Luigi designs from, like, you know, Yoshi's Island and stuff like that. So,
right. I have to say, I was totally blown away. I know this is silly, but I was totally blown away that they directly referenced the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, like the rap. That was incredible. Like I loved that when I was young, and the fact that they actually put that in the movie was just incredible.
Definitely.
Jaws actually has a question for you, Strife. This
Okay.
is related to Mario adjacent. Strife, in your opinion, why didn't a Rocky game exist for the NES?
That's a good question because when you think about NES, you think of all the movie titles that they've had, like the movie games, like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Terminator, Karate Kid had one. I don't know. Maybe for some reason, maybe that somebody didn't thought it was marketable. I mean, Sega actually did though make a game in that era for the Master System. Where it's but it's a really short game where I think obviously Apollo, Clever, and Ivan, and that's honestly that's a franchise that hasn't really had like excellent like Rocky games. Like, don't get me wrong, I like the Rocky and Rocky Legends for the PS2, but like even like some of the newer ones, it's like, come on, y'all can afford to like use your imagination to like fill in the gaps with some of these characters. Like the very first Rocky game, for example, where you the one on PS2, you go through Rocky's career, but they use like every single name and like iteration of character they can think of the movie, where even people that are mentioned in dialogue and people you've seen through like the Rocky 3 montage, like they used everything, and I think it's kind of sad that like some of the newer Rocky games haven't used that, like Creed Rise to Glory or Big Rumble Boxing Champions, because and for whatever reason, like a lot of them don't include Tommy Gunn. Like I don't know what's up with that. Like, and I mean we know he's still canon because Rocky laughs when Adonis says, "Hey, train me," and he's like, I haven't done that in a long time. I don't do that anymore. So yeah, right. I don't know. I'm hoping that somebody comes along and makes a really good Rocky game. I know this era is kind of, you don't really see a lot of movie tie-in games anymore. But I think somebody could come along and make it right. So we'll see.
Right. And I'll admit, like back when I played the Punch Out, like it was Mike Tyson's Punch Out, then it was Punch Out. In my brain, I kind of thought of it as kind of a Rocky game. Like as I was playing it, kind of that underdog rising up, Little Mac, kind of like Rocky a little bit. So I don't know, maybe spiritually somewhat similar.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Robana says, talking about the Super Mario movie, it's too much like the game. No really big story or character development, but that's what makes it fun.
Yep.
Know. So we were talking about the cast that they put in. Obviously, they tended to use a lot of name actors in this. Do you have a favorite performance in this movie?
Oh, Jack Black, easily. Easily. Like, it's because when I was thinking, it was like Jack Black is Bowser, I was like, he's gonna do the same thing. However everything he does, like in every single movie. But like then when you saw that trailer, and then like when he was he's attacking the Penguin Castle or whatever, I was like, okay, he's stealing the show, like easily. So yeah, he just like, it was really fun. I would say Key was really good as Toad too. That'd probably be like my second choice. I think those two kind of stole the movie, and that kind of, it makes sense. They're they're natural comedians, so yeah, they really shine through in the movie, in my opinion.
Right, and he had a smaller part in it, but I actually really liked Charlie Day as Luigi.
Luigi,
like.
Yeah.
I felt like he kind of embodied Luigi, but I have to agree with you. Jack Black totally stole the show. And it wasn't just, you talked about that scene where he comes out, it's like, oh, this is perfect for Bowser.
Yeah.
Eventually, as we watched the movie, I was just so happy to see everyone talks about the Peaches song. But the thing is, it's like they cast Jack Black and it made sense because they used his talents.
Right.
Like it's almost like that Tenacious D vibe, like he's an amazingly funny, great musician, and he is singing as Bowser, a ridiculous song for Princess Peach, and I'm just like, this is perfect. They cast him for a reason, and they used him. It was great.
I will say, one thing I found was really funny is they let Seth Rogen do his trademark laugh as Donkey Kong. So yeah, that was pretty funny.
Right now, okay, what do you feel like? Are there downsides? Do you feel like there are downsides to this movie? Is there something that when you walked out of the theater, you went, I wish it had more of this, or I missed this?
I don't know. I'm not gonna say it was the perfect movie. I mean, I would say in obviously miles ahead of the original 93 movie, like just because there's so much more you can do in animation than you can do obviously like live action. Maybe I think it would have been cool if they had, like I said, let Charles Martinet be Mario. That would have been like the one thing like I could easily say about the movie still. It maybe felt a little short, but then again, like, do you want a movie that's for that like to be kind of long too at the same time? Because like I felt like, but maybe that's just because like I felt, I was watching the movie the entire time and became someone trapped in it. That's why maybe it felt short. Because like I remember right after the Rainbow Road scene, they were already about to fight Bowser. I'm like, this is it, like already. So yeah, maybe length, I guess. But then again, with that kind of those kind of movies, you don't want them to go on too long either. So,
right. OAJ in the comments, thanks for being a channel member. Says the glowing starfish was annoying.
Oh yeah. I forgot what the name for that thing is, but they were in Mario Galaxy. Lumas, maybe.
Lumas, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
The Luma. So. I thought that was funny, but maybe they kind of overplayed it a little bit. But amusing. Sebastian says Charlie Day as Luigi may sound completely different from Charles Martinet's Luigi voice, but at least Charlie Day's voice fits Luigi personality-wise, unlike Chris Pratt voicing Mario.
Yeah, interesting. That's a good point.
Right. Yeah, and OAJ says I'm referring to the blue star in the cage that was locked up.
Oh,
with
yeah.
Luigi. Right,
yeah.
Right. The depressing, it's kind of a funny idea, this kind of nihilistic Luma. Bye, Maite. Thanks for joining us. It did seem like a movie to me. Like I walked out of there and I'm like, this definitely seems like the type of movie where if anyone has like a thought, it probably goes out and gets 10 sets of notes from like everyone involved in the movie. Like you probably have everyone at Nintendo, giving feedback. And it really felt like maybe every decision was really probably cross-checked by 10 different departments. But that's kind of a good thing, because you talked about in the Super Mario Brothers movie in 93, they just like went off in this different direction. And I remember thinking it was okay at the time, but I was really disappointed that it didn't take place in the Mushroom Kingdom. There really wasn't much in the game that was in the movie. It was really different and dark. And this movie is legit Mario.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And like you think about that too, like other movies of the era, like the Street Fighter movie, like, that was kind of, I'm a huge Street Fighter fan. So like the story could have like, they could have just easily made it a kind of like a kickboxer or Bloodsport like a movie, with because Jean-Claude Van Damme was known for that anyway. But at least they did stuff from the game, like the moves and stuff like that. But I always laugh at Damien Chappa's lazy short Yuken, as I call it, because there's the way he's just like spins real slowly when he hits Sagat. So, but yeah, for sure.
The music, Brian Tyler, you had mentioned before, really great, referencing the games. And I think it's kind of cool because Brian Tyler not only has done movies like in the Avengers series, done all these really amazing movie scores. He's scored games like Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag.
Oh, wow.
So it's like, he's done both. And he was probably the perfect person to score this, and including the end credits where there was this amazing medley of orchestrated Mario themes, with a full orchestra. Really cool.
Yeah, that's really awesome. But speaking of the music, did you know that like they didn't credit the DK rap properly to Grant I forgot what his name was, Grant something. So
you're right. There was a DK rap. Oh, they didn't.
Yeah. They just said, it's just from the game and whatnot, which is kind of disappointing. Like they didn't do that. So,
yeah, that is too bad. It's got to be disappointing, especially it being so popular, such a popular movie, and just an amazing showcase for the DK rap, and your name's not attached to it. That's too bad.
Yeah, definitely.
Hopefully they'll fix that going forward. And so your thoughts, you think it's a good move? It was a good move for Nintendo to be very involved with the production of this movie.
Yeah, because I mean, even though they were kind of involved in the '93 movie, yeah, we kind of saw there was still like some changes and stuff like that. And I think that's kind of a good point too, because thankfully the movie back then didn't have any ill effect on the franchise. Like, imagine if it did, you know, it would have been kind of bad. So I think that this, you know, when you think, and I also think about how more mainstream Mario started getting in the early 2010s and stuff like that, I think it would make sense that they would kind of be like protective of their brand. So yeah, I think it was a good move for them to be, you know, as close to production as possible.
Right. That is a thought you just brought up that I had coming out of the movie, though, was that I feel like this should have come out 10 to 15 years ago. Like, it feels really late. It's great. I mean, it's doing well, but it's almost like they could have started making these 10 to 15 years ago.
I know it was tied up for a very long time. I remember reading something about that. I can't remember how far back it was, but yeah, they were, it was in development hell for a long time, from what I understand. Kind of like the Mortal Kombat movie too. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, of course, we talked about the end credit scene, and then there's the post credit scene where we get a tease for future movies. And yeah, so what are your thoughts? What do you think is possible? Like, if we get another movie, is it going to be probably the same tone? Where are they going to take it? What's the future for this franchise?
I think they would probably, hopefully they expand a little bit more detail in the second movie. I guess the only thing I'm kind of confused about is they saw Yoshi's early in the movie. So are they just treating it like this other Yoshi just got left behind somehow, or was in the thing? And then, you know, obviously it's a baby Yoshi too. So that's the other thing I'm just kind of confused about. It's just like, how are they going to do that? But maybe I'm also reading too deep into it, because I think Super Mario World 2, where it was like Yoshi that actually took care of, you know, baby Mario when he was younger. So yeah, I don't know. But I think there's potential for not only a Super Mario sequel, but also a Legend of Zelda movie. They could even make a Star Fox movie, I think, or a Metroid movie. I'd love to see an Earthbound movie. I don't think that would ever happen though. But yeah, they could really kind of start doing some of they have like so much potential for spinoffs. Like, they could do a Donkey Kong Country movie. Because I mean, technically it's all we've seen now, like all that exists within the same universe. So
Right. So this might be a good time to talk about, you know, we talked about Zelda. We talked about their other properties that might not directly relate to the Mario universe. And there are rumors and reports that they've been working on a Zelda movie. Do you think that they're going to have to change things up? Like, to me, it almost seems like if you're going to do Zelda, you can't take the same approach as Mario. Like, it doesn't necessarily lend itself to like the fast humor and references and light story. It almost seems like Zelda, you would actually need a heavier story, like a fantasy, almost like quasi RPG type, you know, story. And if Illumination is doing it, they might have to make a different movie than they're used to making. If you're doing a Zelda movie, I don't know. What do you think about approaching Zelda?
yeah, I think you're right. It would have to be lore heavy for sure. And the other problem about that too is that it's just like, okay, well, which one would they go with? Because there's so many different timelines and so many different games that they've gone in different directions. And you think about it too, like just recently, Zelda has really started getting voice acting outside of short clips of catchphrases and, you know, exclamations like that, like with Breath of the Wild, for example. So yeah, it would have to be something very lore heavy. I'm trying to think of what would be a previous like obviously non-animated, non-Nintendo animated film. Maybe something like Fern Gully. I guess that's kind of like the closest thing I can think of, like where it had its light humor and whatnot, but it had a serious story.
Right.
I guess that's kind of one of the first examples I can think to come to mind. I'm not sure what you think about that. So
Yeah, yes, right, something like that. And I think you have Bowser is a funny villain, but you have Ganon, who's, I mean, in the Zelda games, like it's pretty dark stakes, you know, for the
right.
world, for Hyrule. And yeah, I don't know. Do you think if they make one, they try to emulate the Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom art style?
Probably, I would say so. Yeah, that'd probably be one of that would be that. Or if they went something a little kind of like the HD ports they did for the 3DS for like Ocarina of Time or Majora's Mask, that would be a good style too. But yeah, that's excuse me. Yeah, like that'd be very interesting to see like how they would treat Ganon, just because, like you say, very serious villain compared to Bowser. Almost kind of like a psychopath in a way. I would kind of think like in a like Raw Julius and Bison in a way, where he's kind of funny, but like like he's serious, like for sure. So
Right. Well, bringing up all these different properties, all these different Nintendo properties, you brought up all the spin-offs of the Super Mario Brothers movie, and we've got Zelda, we've got probably a lot of other Nintendo characters. Is this a good thing? Do you see this becoming like a Marvel Universe type thing where you could come out with all these different types of movies? Or do you think there's a danger that they could start to make too many of these?
I think it could be like Marvel, but you would have, like you said, they would have to be careful on how many they make, because they would need the same amount of quality control that they did with the Mario movie, like every single one of them. Like I kind of think that's why you have stuff like, Creed and Cobra Kai, as successful as they are, because they kind of go through, I would assume somewhat of not as heavy as Nintendo did, but like a decent quality control where the writing's very congruent. Like I remember even like, recently when I was doing like some of the Creed videos and stuff and some of the Rocky videos, I was rewatching like a lot of the films, and like I had noticed that Stallone has very congruent writing. Like when he makes a lot of references to previous films or upcoming films, like Rocky Balboa, for example, the whole it's not how hard that you get hit. He's talking about his son needs to live for himself. That was like the same advice that he was originally going to give his son in the director's cut of Rocky 4. It's like very similar speech. And then I was trying to think of some of the other stuff, but yeah, it was, that kind of writing is like what you need for stuff like this. Like very congruent, very, very consistent writing. You got to kind of have to treat this franchise the same way.
Yeah, I agree. That's a wonderful reference to Sylvester Stallone in the Rocky movies. And maybe we'll get that because the producers of the Mario movies seem to be like Shigeru Miyamoto and like all the programmers who created Mario and these Nintendo games. They probably know this universe obviously better than anyone. And
right,
they're probably sticklers for that. Like this has to be in there. This doesn't make sense for the character, that type of thing.
Right. I agree.
Yeah. So I don't know. So I guess what are your thoughts overall? Like, are there any things that we really didn't talk about? I guess a whole other discussion could be the 93 Mario movie. Like that's its own thing. Maybe people will go back and watch it. I don't even know if you can watch it now. I think you can watch it. You can download it from Riff Tracks if you like Mystery Science Theater type riffing. They've done that. And you can download an HD version of the Mario movie and they riff it, which is actually really funny. But I don't know. I guess this stands alone. This has broke. In fact, I can bring this up. It's setting all kinds of new box office records. It just crossed $500 million at the domestic box office. It is now Illumination's top grossing movie of all time.
Right.
It's also something like I think it's the fourth highest grossing movie post pandemic as well. And that is just incredible.
Yeah, it's also the biggest worldwide opening weekend for an animated film, the highest grossing film so far of 2023, and 2023 is not even over yet, and it is the highest grossing film based on a video game, as well as the sixth highest grossing animated film of all time. So, yeah, it's insane, obviously, and what I'm thinking too is kind of like how I said earlier, both this film and I think Sonic have now set a standard of like, this is how you make these type of movies. This is what you need to take notes on. And if we get more people on board like that with any kind of other franchises that are being tackled, then we could have a new era where we're getting very faithful video game movies that don't suck. So,
right.
yeah.
So I know you mentioned a few before. What are your wishes? Not even just Nintendo, but games in general. What games out there need to be made into movies, do you think?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'm trying to think. I think if I'm kind of thinking if I should talk about ones that have already been done before that just need to be remade,
Sure.
or like I've kind of heard I haven't seen Welcome to Raccoon City, so I don't know if I get a proper opinion. I've heard some people say it was very faithful, but they didn't like it. But I don't know. I feel like a Resident Evil film shouldn't be that hard to make. Like all you have to do is just make it like very kind of like somewhat of almost a slasher in a way, like, and like, on top of like mystery. Like it's not that hard to make. Like, yes, I get that there's, a lot of stuff but you can kind of condense that really easily. Like I feel like I don't know why so many people have trouble with adapting that.
I 100% agree.
Yeah. I would say, but see, Street Fighter's Assassin's Fist is really, really good. If they could continue that into Street Fighter 2, that would be really good. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but that was kind of like an indie film that people have made. That's about the most accurate Street Fighter film out there, and it's really, really good. It follows kind of Ryu and Ken's early days of training before the events of Street Fighter 1, kind of going into Street Fighter Alpha. So that was really, really good. I would say Final Fantasy maybe as well, but I guess at the same time they could easily. But I mean, yeah, they can make it an animated film, like, and you have so much that you kind of go off of as far as that goes. Like so many different series, so many different stories. I'm trying to think of what else. Man.
Well, you brought up RPGs, and
Right.
one of my favorite series of all time is the Fallout series, and I know that's getting a TV series adaptation, which
nice.
I'm curious about. Like that could be done really well, or like anything, it could not be. But
right.
What about the Bethesda game? What about Elder Scrolls? Like, should that be a movie?
Could be. Well, to be honest, I've only played Skyrim, so I haven't really played any of the other ones, but I want to play Oblivion just because of all the memes I've seen about the dialogue. So yeah, easily, like with those kind of, I think you could easily adapt something like that. Like honestly, Doom probably would be a good film remake too. Like if they just did that right, so. And I'm not even a huge Doom fan, but just thinking like off the top of my head, that should, like, why do they have so much trouble adapting that, so.
Do you think it's something where the game studio is willing to do it? They want a movie adaptation, and maybe a studio is willing to do it, but they hire people who aren't necessarily, like they understand how to make movies, but they don't get the game. And maybe it's tough to find filmmakers that they would hire that also understand the game and why the game's popular.
Probably, but I think at that point, that's why you should have those type of guys that do know the game, at least have consultants on the film. You got to have those type of people, like for example, you look at Cobra Kai, they never necessarily made anything production wise back in the day of Karate Kid, but they, they understood the story and the lore and whatnot, and that's how they were able to make successful. If they had tried it with anybody else, it just wouldn't have worked. I think that's what also makes that series good. You have to have some kind of consulting on that film. Not to mention, they also consulted Robert Mark Kamen, the original writer of the films. So, you have to have like some kind of experts on set or on hand to make sure that type of movie is going to work. So, I think you have to have like those consultants on film, because maybe if the consultant can't make the film, that's fine, but they can tell you what's going to work and what's not going to work when it comes to adapting that material.
Right. And I totally echo you on Resident Evil. I also haven't seen Welcome to Raccoon City. It looked like they were trying to make a faithful adaptation of Resident Evil 1 and 2, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've heard a lot of people say it's not quite there. And it does seem like a series that is made to be a movie. Like that would be a good adaptation, and it could be scary. It could have like a bit of a sci-fi feel to it. Atmospheric,
Right.
And like I don't know why they made that Netflix Resident Evil series. It didn't make sense to me at all. Like
Right.
I don't know, but
yeah, I didn't even see it, and it's kind of a shame too, because I'm sure Lance Reddick, rest in peace, he probably carried that show. Like I haven't even seen the series, but I know that like from what I've heard, he was really good. Like it's kind of like Raul Julia carrying Street Fighter. So
right, if you take Lance Reddick playing Wesker and put him in like an actual Resident Evil story, I mean, I think he'd be a great movie villain. You know what I mean? So. But well, Strife, this is a lot of fun. I mean, bottom line, if you haven't seen the Super Mario Brothers movie and you enjoy playing the Mario games at all, if you enjoy Nintendo and that kind of thing, definitely go out and see it. I know it's coming to streaming soon. I think it's a lot of fun, and it brought me joy to see it. And I don't know, what would be your overall recommendation?
Yeah, definitely see it. Like, even if you're not a hardcore Mario fan or just a casual fan, it's definitely worth seeing, because it's everything a video game movie should be. Honestly, that's probably the best way I can sum it up.
Right. And that's another thing too. I really respected that they didn't try to overshoot the mark. They didn't try to do this whole sentimental, deep story that was maybe a bit sappy, they didn't do that. It felt like playing the video game. It felt like playing a Mario platformer. It was that sense of fun, which I really appreciate that they did that.
Yep, agreed.
Well, Strife, so I want to thank everyone for joining today. I want to thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Can you give us any hints as to some things going up on your channel soon?
Yeah, I'm still kind of working on some Rocky and Creed material. I'm taking a break this month just because I have a couple trips lined up. So you'll probably see a little bit more content from me in June. I'll probably still be live streaming here and there, but yeah, it's just I kind of like worked on those last 4 videos back to back, so I'm taking a little bit of a break right now. But I'm still live streaming to do that. Work has kind of been started catching up with me too, so like my days are stacked. Like basically, I'm pretty much working like almost 9-10 hour days basically. And then trying to find time to work out, and then eat and all that, and then go to sleep. So yeah, it's that's kind of what I'm doing right now. But hopefully when things will start kind of wrapping up near beginning of June. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, luckily for all viewers and new viewers, you have so much great existing content, so many hours that people can go through and enjoy. And I can't recommend your channel highly enough.
Thank you.
I've got a link in the description. Strife the Warrior. Head over to his channel, subscribe. It's well worth it. Say hi to him, leave a comment. And Strife, it has been a pleasure, and I really look forward to talking with you again on video game movies or Cobra Kai or other nostalgic things. It's always great having you on.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next discussion we have as well. You know where to find me. You got my number, so.
That's right. That's right. And follow him on social media as well. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Apologize about like the technical thing, but I see your comments, love them, and look forward to seeing you next time on KenCast. Everyone have a great rest of your week.